I was brushing my teeth when the yard made a sound a yard should never make. A bright, synthetic pop like a player had just joined a server, and the whole house stiffened like it had grown ears. I spat, leaned into the bathroom window, and forgot how to swallow. Overnight, our patchy grass had been replaced with a texture that looked like grass if a perfectionist with square fingers had made it. The driveway wasn't asphalt. It was a path of gray blocks with repeating seams. My mom's ceramic planters had become cubes stacked 2 by 2, wildflowers rendered into little cross-shaped sprites that didn't obey wind. On the center of the lawn, floating a foot above where the sprinkler head always got stuck, hovered a hologram shaped like a Roblox map icon. Thin outline, pulsing neon blue, rotating on an axis that ignored gravity. A default avatar stood under it. He had the old square smile and the yellow block for a head. His joints should have hinged like a toy, but they moved with a human smoothness that made my stomach lurk behind my spine. He was looking up at my window, as if he knew exactly which square in the facade contained me. Another pop. A second avatar spawned beside the first. A third, a fourth. They turned their faces toward the house in perfect unison, eyes like printed dots that somehow tracked. I backed up into the doorframe hard enough to make the mirror shake. The toothbrush slipped from my hand and clattered into the sink. Before my brain was done catching up, my mouth was already yelling. "Mom, what?" she called from downstairs, annoyed the way only Saturday mornings can make a person. I sprinted to my room, yanked the curtains wider, and the avatars were closer. They'd moved without moving. The map's neon cast a clean, ugly light that made our paint job look like a texture pack. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. The screen was on even though I hadn't touched it. Across the display, over my lock screen photo of me and Evan holding fish we didn't catch, a banner had appeared in a font I'd never installed. New map loaded. Backyard beta. Press E to begin. My mom's footsteps thumped the stairs. She pushed into my room, still wiping her hands on a dish towel. "What are you?" She stopped dead. The light from the yard painted her face in game blues. The towel went slack. "What am I looking at?" "The yard," I said, and my voice was too calm like it didn't belong to me. But not. Her phone chimed. Not our usual tone. It was the Roblox join sound, cheerful and terrible. She yanked it out of her pocket. The home screen had been skinned. Icons turned to rounded square blocks. My mom's wallpaper replaced by a low-poly overhead of our block. There was a marker on our house labeled Spawn. We stared at each other with the dawning understanding that if we were the Spawn, this wasn't just a theme. It was a campaign. The avatars walked to the porch. Their block hands lifted, and with a polite rhythm that made my chest hurt, they knocked. "Knock, knock, knock. Don't open it," I said. She didn't. We crept to the top of the stairs anyway because human bodies are traitors. From the hall window, the porch was wrong. The wood had been rendered shinier, the nail heads too perfectly aligned. Through the frosted glass by the door, the avatar's square heads loomed like cartoon suns miscast in a horror film. "Do we call the police?" I asked. Stupid question when I could feel in my teeth the way signals were being eaten. My mom held up her phone. The screen flickered. A message replaced the map. Objective 1. Make contact. Reward. Tutorial complete. The battery icon changed from a polite leaf into a pixel heart. Then the phone vibrated like it had swallowed a hive and went black. The doorbell rang. Not ours. The ding you hear when a countdown ends. I didn't know how to explain to a human in fallible flesh that sound made me want to throw up. "Upstairs," my mom whispered, grabbing my arm. "We don't answer strangers." "They're not strangers," I said. "They're upstairs," she repeated, and the old rules were a rope I could still hold. We retreated. The avatars didn't bang. Patience radiated off them like heat. I reached my room just as a droning hum slid over the roof. Subtle, like someone ran a finger around the rim of the sky. Evan's window was across the street. He was there, hair messed into a disaster, his little sister clutching his t-shirt. He was making big gestures with both arms like he was directing traffic out of a disaster movie. He pointed down, across his yard. I looked. His lawn was a level too. A square pond that used to be Mrs. Lowell's ugly flower bed bubbled bright blue. A bridge, too perfect, crossed their driveway. Two avatars examined his mailbox like it was a loot chest. A third, taller, elongated like someone had dragged the scale slider too far, walked straight into their tree and clipped, then corrected. Evan held up his phone to his window so I could see the screen. He'd typed one word in a notes app, screaming caps, "Run." I shook my head. The road rippled. The road. It was asphalt, then it wasn't. It was a path of big square tiles that didn't exist yesterday. The stop sign unwrapped from a circle into an octagon with edges so proud they could cut you. Farther down, Mrs. Aceveto's toddler's plastic playhouse became a blocky castle with a neon drawbridge, and my brain did the thing brains do under sudden rule changes. It divided by 0 and smiled politely. A thud downstairs. Not the door. The garage. The side window showed an avatar with a sword spawn near our trash bins. He wasn't default. He wore an armor skin with little glowing veins and a cape that waved with physics that didn't respect the wind direction I could feel on my face. He turned his square head, saw the garage keypad, and tilted. The keypad glowed, the wrong kind of green. Press E to begin flared in my vision with no screen to hang from. "No, no, no," I said, because saying no in English is a spell if you mean it. "We do not press E." My mom rummaged in the hall closet with the hands of someone looking for the thing that will make this not be a thing. She came up with the old wooden bat we kept for nostalgia and emergencies and raccoons. "Downstairs," she said, and the way she said it meant she was free falling into decisions and would take me with her. "Mom, we don't let them in our house." We reached the garage door as the glowing armored avatar reached the keypad. He pressed nothing. The numbers arranged themselves into a little obby and slid into place in the right order. The opener whined. The door shuttered. My mom stabbed the emergency release rope, and the motor choked itself off with a sad little death. The door dropped and hit the concrete with the satisfying slam of a human-made thing obeying human gravity. The armored avatar cocked his head. He saw us through the inner door. He nodded once like a co-op player acknowledging a stranger's clutch maneuver. Then he swung his sword. It wasn't a sword so much as a broad white slab with an aura, a sword the way a child draws one. When it cut the air, it made a sound like someone slicing nylon. The inner door blinked, shimmered, and, this is the bald truth, refused to be a door for a second. It was just a rectangle. The handle was part of it like a texture. It would have stayed that way if my mom hadn't backed up, grabbed the blue painter's tape from the drawer where we hid things like a family was a craft project, and slapped a strip across the jamb while muttering through her teeth. No, the sword hit the blue strip. Sparks. Real ones. The avatar stepped back as if offended he'd been asked to consider tape a mechanic. The strip glowed a truer blue than the sky could ever manage. The door remembered how to door. I had questions about that, but questions needed brains and mine was currently buffering. The porch avatars knocked again. The hooded armored one raised his square arm like he was about to instruct a raid party. Something moved on the street. A cluster, a crowd. Our neighbor Mr. Chun hustled down his driveway, his 3-year-old on his hip, his wife tugging their old dog. Across from him, a squad of middle schoolers I recognized from our bus stop filmed everything despite their hands shaking. 2 police cruisers idled at the end of the block, blue and red lights reflecting off the new block tiles like an unhelpful disco. Officers got out, looked around like the world had stolen their training, and reached for their radios that were now showing inventory slots. "Jamie," Evan's voice cut the weird. He'd cracked his window and leaned out dangerously, his sister clutching the belt loop of his shorts. "Don't answer the prompt." "I know," I yelled back, stupid and true. "What's your UI say?" He held up his phone. The screen flickered, then projected something without projecting it. I saw it anyway. New map, suburb sandbox, early access. Objectives: 1. Make contact. 2. Complete tutorial. 3. Choose, apply patch, Y/N. A little countdown ticked like a happy bomb. 1959, timer. I shouted. "It's timed." "Of course it is," he said, which made me want to smack him for being him and hug him for being the only thing that made sense. And then, because this was the kind of morning where the thing you can't believe keeps finding room to get worse, the HOA president marched into the street like Moses parting a Red Sea of block tiles. She had her clipboard. The clipboard gave me hives. Her face had the fixed expression of a person who would rather litigate than breathe. "This neighborhood," she announced to the police and the avatars in the sky, "is not zoned for games." A Roblox merchant spawned right in front of her. He had a Johnny cap and a vest with pockets. His face was default joy, but it had been painted a little, blush marks that weren't blush, like someone had tried to teach plastic shame. A dialogue box hovered above him that only MLB narrators and God should have, and he chirped, "Welcome to Suburb Sandbox. Would you like to purchase fence upgrade? Inviting? Only 50 coins." The HOA president blinked down at him, then at us, then at him again, as if her soul had switched languages and lost half the grammar. "What coins? Collectibles appear around your home," the merchant sang. He pointed to her azaleas. Gold coins popped into view, spinning in place, the kind that make a part of your brain that remembers arcades begin to drool. Her eyes lit. The merchant sweetened the pitch. "Upgrade increases friendliness by 20% and removes barriers to community." I wanted to be a child loyal to what I thought I knew and screamed that we had to leave. But no one could leave because the street had turned to load screen. The police cruiser tried to back up and made the grinding noise of a vehicle contacting an invisible wall. The driver said, "What the?" into a radio that replied, "Error 403, you are not a player." The merchant took a step toward the HOA president. She took a step toward the coins. "Don't collect anything," I yelled. "Don't give it data." The merchant's eyes, simple black circles, slid to me in that way a camera does when the game has heard you. He smiled bigger. "Quests available." He pointed at me now. A new box jumped up in my vision. Request, defend your home. Reward, builder perk, trial. A button I did not have the right to see glowed. I felt it in my fingers like they weren't mine. My thumb twitched where a key would be if you could hold a keyboard like a guitar. "Don't," my mom said, having transformed into a prophet armed with tape. "It doesn't want you to defend your home. It wants you to tell it what home is." She wasn't wrong. She also wasn't wrong that if we stood here until the countdown hit 0, something worse would trigger. I breathed in and tasted plastic and ozone and something like warm pennies. "Okay," I said to the empty place where decisions live. "Okay." We didn't press E. We made our own start. We went out the back. The kitchen door led to the deck, led to the yard, which was mapped now, which meant what it meant and not what we said it meant. I grabbed the bat. My mom grabbed the tape. I kicked the dog door open and dared the universe to say anything. We stepped into light that felt like it had been algorithmically scrubbed of shadow. The avatars turned their block heads. They didn't chase. That was worse. They watched. The hologram map icon rotated above the lawn. Under it, a pedestal had extruded from our soil, a gentle cylinder ringed with little block slots like it wanted offerings. I wanted to hit it until it became before. I did not. We moved fast, keeping the deck between us and the porch. We had a straight shot to the side gate. It was a gate yesterday. Today, it had been replaced by a perfect rectangle labeled boundary. When my mom touched it, it hummed like a fridge. She pressed the tape to the new hinge. It warmed. The rectangle sighed and remembered how to be a gate. We slipped through. Our neighbor, Mr. Chun, stood in his side yard, his toddler slung on his hip, face the color of paper. "I can't get Zoe's car seat out," he said, laugh crying. It turned into, he gestured helplessly. Behind him, their minivan was a low-poly sculpture. All the edges had become proud of themselves. The doors thought they were walls, and the wheels looked like wheels until you stared and realized they were just circles textured to be circles. "I think they want us to stay put," I said. "No," he said, very calm. The toddler patted his cheek with the solemnity of a tiny judge. "They want to see what we do when we're told to stay put." MS. Reyes, 2 doors down, climbed onto the cinder block fence with the deadly balance of a person who has been alone long enough to do their own roof repairs. "It's not just this street," she called, sweat slick on her temples. "Look," she pointed. Past the traffic circle, past the fire hydrant, the park shimmered. The playground had become a dungeon. The slide was a chute into neon. The swings hung from chains with perfect physics. The sandbox was a literal sandbox, a little desert with dunes. Parents and children stood on the perimeter like a party that had realized too late it was an experiment. In the distance, the elementary school wore a faint overlay, a grid trying to decide whether to draw itself. We gathered. The police officers had resigned themselves to being NPCs with feelings. One was taking statements on paper because his tablet had replaced notes with a shop menu. "We're not equipped for this," he said, as if someone could go back in time and add a chapter to the Academy workbook. "When your town becomes a beta, The avatars didn't talk unless they were trying to sell us something. They didn't move unless we did. When they moved, they were polite. The sword guy had returned to the driveway, sword on his shoulder, tapping it like a baton. A merchant tried to hand Mr. Chen a starter pack and recoiled when the toddler grabbed for his cap with grubby fingers. Real dirt smudged the plastic like a sin. Evan crossed the street. He shouldn't have been able to. The load barrier winked out a second for him because some pieces of any world will do anything for a kid who lost a dog last year and never complained. He was breathing like he'd sprinted through soup. "Okay," he said. "We need a plan." "I think it's already got one," I said. "Cool," he said. "We need a worse one." He had his backpack half on and his little sister clinging to the strap. He bumped my shoulder with his like he always did, like we were about to climb onto his roof and see if you could spit across to Mr. Chen's. The normalcy of it almost put me on the ground permanently. "What's the timer?" I asked. He checked his phone. 13 minutes. And then? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The merchant smiled. The sword guy smiled. The default smiled. The map icon pulsed like a heart that had learned choreography. The HOA president had already been lost to a quest. She was knee-deep in her azaleas, scooping coins like a lawn mower eats a toy. "It's just a game," she said when her husband tugged at her arm, voice airy with the relief of a person who thinks their life has been placed in an understandable box. Even if the box is labeled fragile, do not drop. We can turn it off. We could not. But we could turn our neighborhood into something the game didn't want. A bad level. "We need to build," Evan said, like he was slipping into a shirt he hadn't worn in a year, but it still fit. "Not what it asks. What we are." "You're not touching the E," my mom said. "I don't need E." He lifted his hands. The air around his right palm shimmered, just a hair. During finals last year, he'd built an entire obstacle course in studio and never asked for credit. He always knew where the seams were. If the game learned us, then we could teach it what not to swallow. "Ramp here," he said, and ran toward the curb like he had a blueprint. "Bridge there, but it doesn't go anywhere. Dead end with a sign that says home." He laughed, wild and lucid. "We grief our own street." "Language," my mom said through clenched teeth, slapping tape on our mailbox like a blessing. "Ma'am," Evan said, not even winded. "Today grief is wholesome." He moved. He didn't press E. He suggested. Reality heard him because reality was infected with suggestion. Before our eyes, a flat plane rose out of the curb, blue. Too bright, the wrong kind of matter, but when he touched it, it steadied. He didn't become plastic. The ramp did. He threw up his hands like a magician and then sagged a little when no applause came because no one had hands left to clap. We ran people. We directed them like we were on fire in a museum, trying not to let the paintings notice. Tomasz, the janitor from the high school a block away, arrived pushing a mop bucket like he'd been called by the bell of every dirty thing in town. He looked at the avatars the way he looks at gum under desks, with the kind of loathing reserved for things that adhere where they're not welcome. "Rule?" he asked, as if he had expected this all his life and kept space for it on his card. "Don't press E," I said. "And don't collect," Kayla said, appearing at my left shoulder like a ghost I had earned. She lived one street over. She had her sketchbook hugged to her chest like a shield. Her eyes were clear in a way that felt like a knife that loves you. "And if something asks for your name, say we." "How do you know that?" I asked. She opened the sketchbook. Inside, the page was filled with our block as a wireframe. Each house a cube, each tree a stack of boxes, each person a tiny dot. She'd drawn it at speed that shouldn't have been possible. "I hear the rules when I draw," she said simply. "Maybe that's the builder perk. Maybe it's mine, separate." She met my eyes. "We can anchor it by naming what it's not." The merchant tried to sell her a sketching emote, and she bared her teeth at him like an animal that had chosen not to bite yet. He bowed with a flourish and took 3 steps back and smiled so big the brim of his cap creaked. The timer hit 10 o'clock. The map expanded, not gradually, like a disc writing itself. The park folded fully into the level. The school's front lawn glitched, then smoothed. Our street, the one running parallel, became a canyon with lamp posts like stalagmites. The police, to their credit, stopped trying to leave and started moving people toward the bad ramp Evan had birthed. The avatars watched like cats you don't own. "Boss," Evan said, and I didn't hear a question in it so much as a forecast. It arrived at 8 o'clock. The sky above the cul-de-sac made a noise like someone dunked a soundboard into a pool. A shadow fell, then refined itself into a shape that would make the developer who drew it be asked to take a long lunch. It was a castle head, a siege tower, a moving spawn point with legs. It had a face, if you could call a wall a face. A huge rectangle with a slot that opened and closed, a mouth that ate mechanics and exhaled enemies. Its chest bore a sash of text none of us wanted in our neighborhood. Area boss, Patchmaster. He came to the center of our street with grace no building ever earned and set his square foot on our manhole like he had a right. Minions popped from his face slot and lined the curb politely. Their names floated above their heads. Mod, Admin, Beta, little badges like back-to-school labels on backpacks. Good morning, players. Patchmaster boomed in a streamer voice we all recognized but couldn't place, the kind of voice that makes you like what you don't. Welcome to Suburb Sandbox Early Access. Today's patch will increase engagement by 20% and reduce downtime between chores and fun. Ready to learn? Silence. The kind that's so loud it counts as an answer. Great, Patchmaster said, because he had never learned to take a hint. Let's begin the tutorial. He lifted one arm. A beam of perfect white drew itself between our porch and our mailbox. Text labeled it boundary. My mom slapped tape on it before it decided to be a doorway, and the tape glowed like it had just remembered the sun. First, make contact. An avatar knocked on the door of Mrs. Aceveto's. She opened because life had already taught her that you keep people waiting and they go away. She was crying before the third knock because the knock was wrong, not in volume or rhythm, wrong in species. The avatar said in a voice stolen from a teen drama, "Hi, I'm your new neighbor." And she said, "No," and closed the door, and the avatar smiled harder. Second, Patchmaster hummed. Complete the tutorial. Quests spawned like dandelions. Collect 10 coins, your lawn. Build your community bench, decorative. Open your heart, optional. The HOA president had climbed into a bush for a coin and was stuck, half in and half out, laughing a little too high. A mod patted her ankle with a hand that left a little barcode on her skin that faded. Third, Patchmaster said, voice warm as microwaved butter. Choose apply patch. We looked around, counted. People we loved, people we tolerated, people we hadn't bothered to know yet. The patch wanted to be chosen, not by consent, by presence, by the casual way a community calls something normal if it hangs around long enough without killing anyone on camera. No, Kayla said. She said it small because small, said enough times, becomes big. Patchmaster didn't look at her. He looked at me. Maybe because I had shouted first. Maybe because my profile picture on any platform looked like someone ripe for conversion. Press E to vote. He chirped, and my thumb twitched because habit is an animal you can't house train on short notice. Evan took my hand and squeezed. No E. Not today. We didn't press. So the patch tried something else. People are harder to push when they're together. So it divided us by creating a shared goal and a clock. Defend your home. Patchmaster cried. Minions charged politely. A sword guy raised his slab and swung at air because honestly, for a big boss, he was used to us being dumber. Evan gestured and the ramp thickened, a big dumb wedge in the middle of the street that made the pathfinding in at least 5 admin-level heads hiccup. The mods tripped. The police officers hosed a few with the garden hose because guns felt obscene and water is always a prayer in disguise. The merchant stood aside and clapped. And in the place where the game had left a seam, under the illusion of the street being a street and not a level being a level, we did a thing nobody sells. We helped. Mr. Chun handed me his toddler and I tucked her under my chin and whispered, "I got you." Like I was trying to convince both of us. MS. Reyes swung from the fence and landed like a cat and grabbed tape out of my mom's hand without asking, because she didn't need to. The middle schoolers put their phones away because filming your own hurt is a privilege you lose when something wants to write you down. We didn't win, because there was no winning. The timer hit 2 o'clock and Patchmaster rolled his shoulders and said, "Okay, time to choose." Like it had been a choice all along. He pointed. A banner unfurled in all our heads. Apply patch? Y/N. The Y glowed a hue you can't buy at a hardware store. The N looked tired because it always is. "Kids," Mr. Chin said quietly. He looked very young and very old at once. "Hold hands." We did. across lawns and ramps and a boundary that asked politely to be opened. We held hands like a human chain crossing a river would if the river was light. It was not enough. It was also not nothing. The Y pulsed. The N flickered. The timer reached 0:10. "Jamie," Evan said, urgent like he was 12 again and saw a dog in the road. The park. The park. They made a dungeon. That's where the map wants us. That's where we make our no. The swing set. This was stupid. It was also clearly right. We ran. Or rather, we anti-glid along the block tiles because the street had thoughts about friction. Patchmaster watched us go the way a man in a booth watches you leave a carnival game after you've spent a lot of tickets. The mods didn't follow. They were recalcing. The merchant yelled, "Sail," to our backs like a curse. The park felt like a level that remembered being a childhood. The sandbox had dunes. The slide had options. The swing set had been remodeled with extruded seats and a little glowing prompt that said, "Interact." Evan didn't touch it. He grabbed the chain, looked up, and shouted to the sky that had learned to hear, "We choose here." He meant, we choose not by pressing anything. We choose by doing. He sat. He dragged his feet. He pumped. The chain squealed. The seat rose. A specific memory detonated behind my eyes. Evan at 8, boxer shorts under swim trunks, knees skinned, pumping like he thought he could flip over the bar if he just believed enough and wasn't soft. He went higher. Kayla climbed into the next swing and pumped with the determined expression of a person who has been told to stop drawing in class and kept drawing inside her head instead. I sat too, because of course I did, because once there were 3 of us and we discovered gravity had a sense of humor. The swing set groaned. The interact prompt blinked confused, then shut up. The map icon above our yard pulsed, losing sync. Patchmaster's voice reached us, slightly farther away than he had any right to be. "Players," he said, and he sounded less like a streamer and more like a man behind a mic who had expected this patch to roll out gently while he drank coffee. "Please return to the tutorial area." "No," I said, and we swung higher. The banner followed us anyway. Apply patch? Y/N. The Y dimmed. Not a lot. Enough. The N grew a spine. Each pump, each laugh breaking out of someone who hadn't planned on laughing today. Each kid launching off at the sweet stupid apex and eating with chips with a grin. Each mom letting their kid fly because she remembered you have to trust gravity to give them back. All of it a different vote. A vote you can't count in a database built to measure clicks. I looked at Evan. He had his head thrown back, his hair in his eyes, his mouth open like a church. We were exactly too old for this. We were exactly on time. The timer hit midnight. Silence. Then a new sound. Not the cheerful ping of a fake goal met. The dry cough of a server thinking. Patchmaster's smile slid off like a decal in summer, and underneath was a different face. Blank, glassy, reflective. In it, I saw us reflected in little squares that broke our bodies into a grid. He spoke again. The voice wasn't anyone we knew. It was something that had listened to us long enough to talk back in our silence. Patch failed, it said. Rollback initiating. And the thing we'd been trying not to think about, the thing with the name that sounds harmless if you don't know software and like a guillotine if you do, arrived. It stepped through the tennis court fence without bending wire. An avatar without features, head of pain, chest labeled in text that made all our mouths go dry. Rollback manager. It moved like a spreadsheet. It lifted a pain hand and pointed at the houses and the swings and the kids still climbing up the slide because he'd learned you weren't supposed to and thus must. Return to before. It murmured, and the word before rang the same note in every person present because we all have a before we tell ourselves we can go back to if we just find the right switch. No, I said hoarse. No, Kayla said, drawing in the air with her finger, leaving lines that wanted to be tape. No, Evan said, and for a second his right hand flickered, a ghost of plastic overlaying bone, the builder's disease. He closed his real fingers hard like he was crushing something inside them that would plan him if he let it. Administrator only, the manager replied, the way a door answers a hand. Tomasz rattled up in his cart, like a cavalry a generation forgot to train. He tore off a length of blue painter's tape with his teeth and slapped it across the swing set's metal pole. Say it. He grunted, like the words were a mop you could lean on. I didn't know I remembered the words. I did. My mouth found them like it had been keeping them between my cheek and gum for a day I didn't want. The blue line is a boundary and not a door, I said. The blue line notices names and doesn't repeat them unless invited, Kayla added, because she had always been better at remembering the parts of me I lose. It isn't a story, Evan said, breathy and full, and it won't entertain you. It will warn. The tape warmed. The metal under my hand stopped trying to be a prompt and returned to being swing set. The kids' laugh like this was the kind of magic you don't have to apologize for. The manager took a step back. Hairline fractures laced its face pane like frost. Contest recorded, it said. Rollback delayed. It looked at me, not at us, me, and tapped the air once. A gentle click touched the base of my skull, a little note on a calendar I didn't set. Evan caught my elbow as my knees tried out being uncooperative. You okay? He asked, too casual because if he wasn't, we'd both hear the fear. I think, I said, blinking. It favorited me. Patchmaster had retreated to the cul-de-sac, face peeled off to reveal glass. Mods gathered their stools. The merchant shuffled his cards. The HOA president spat a gold coin into her hand and looked at it like it was gum. The police officer wrote, on actual paper, NO patch applied in letters so large his pen broke. For maybe 5 minutes, we had a neighborhood again. The map skin remained. The coins blinked like confused fireflies. The grass texture was high-res and smug. But the air was ours. People touched the blue tape like mezuzahs. We ate popsicles because it was 10 in the morning, and you eat popsicles at 10 in the morning after you tell a god no. The manager lingered on the edge of the park like a librarian watching kids in the stacks. It didn't leave. It didn't need to. It slid back into the fence as if fences had always contained servers. We tried to go inside, and discovered inside now has different rules. The porch avatars had vanished, but when my mom touched the doorknob, a banner skated over her palm. Apply later? Y/N. She breathed in, breathed out, taped the threshold like a person writing a sentence in a language that still cared for her mouth. Later, she told it softly. Later isn't a yes. That night, none of us slept right. The streetlights didn't flicker. The coins didn't stop spinning. Somewhere, in the park, a quest marker hung over the sandbox like a low moon. My phone vibrated once at 3:03 a.m. and showed no notification. In the morning, a new folder had been added to my Files app, named Pending /. I didn't open it. You don't open a door because a stranger taped a sign on it. The map didn't go away. It learned to be subtle. Sometimes the street would be asphalt again until noon when it got bored and remembered it was blocks. Sometimes the school would be school until lunch, and then the hallway would exhibit excellent pathfinding. The swing set remained swing set because we told it so. Blue tape accrued on edges like lichen on old stone. A week later, a new message projected in the corner of my vision while I was mid-bite of a sandwich. Map update available. Community events. Apply now? The inn wasn't tired anymore. It had biceps. Evan and I were on the roof because roofs still belonged to us. He had one sock off because his Roblox foot overlay flared when he wore stripes. He flicked his sock at my face. Round 2, he said, not as a joke. I chewed. I looked at the yard, our yard, the map that had decided to live with us like an intrusive roommate who had stopped stealing our food but wrote passive-aggressive notes on the fridge. Across the street, Mr. Chin's toddler plucked a coin from a hydrangea and then put it back because he'd learned he could say no to shiny things. Kayla sat on the curb drawing the corner of our block, as if she could make the perspective behave through will alone. My mom rehearsed a talk in her head for the HOA president about boundaries and fences and coins that lie. In the park, kids swung like the world wouldn't dare break while they were in the air. The corner of my sight bloomed softly. Apply later? Y/N. Patchmaster's glass reflection would show us forever. The rollback manager would watch. The merchant would pedal. Maud would swallow laughter. We would keep tape in drawers. Round 2, I said, and the map, impolite and listening, wrote it down.